Welcome to my training session about securely managed PI and workplace information. My name is Imran Khan, an educator from CIT. I'm working with ICT and Cybersecurity Department. If you'd like to contact with me for further question or any clarification, don't hesitate to contact me through my email address, that is imrana.khan@cit.edu.au. Today we're going to learn about 4 different topics, including the CIA Triad, how to take a backup or using 3-to-1 backup solution or strategies. We're going to learn about some practical demonstration on how to keep your personal and private folder safe using the encryption. We'd also like to learn about the firewall configuration today, and also about how you're gonna share your folder securely using the PI. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respect to elders past and present. This is a Nanaval country. We always respect the elders, male and female. We always respect Nanaval country. So let's have a look about today's learning objectives. What will be the outcome of this training session? As I told you before, we're going to cover the CIA Triad, which is called the confidentiality, integrity, and availability in ICT and cybersecurity field. We're going to learn about the data backup strategy as well, using the 3-to-1 backup rule. We're going to learn about the data encryption. I would like to show you a practical demonstration using the Microsoft Azure virtual platform. We are going to also learn about the data sharing strategy for public and private data to make sure the PI has been ensured. It's a practical demonstration as well. And last of all, we're going to learn about the access control, that is a firewall. We're going to learn about how to configure the blocking and the allowing rule using an Microsoft Azure Lab. So what is a CIO triad? CIO triad is actually referring to confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The core principle is actually representing these three core principles as the three main goals of the cybersecurity and information security system nowadays. So it is actually balancing our security goals. Effective security requires the balancing confidentiality, integrity, and availability to avoid trades off and that makes sure you're actually not going to be harmed by any cyber attackers. Real world application, we are going to learn about different real world application regarding this CI triad, which is actually mainly focused on risk assessment, cyber risk assessment, incident response, and defense against different threats and breaches and ransomware. So the first very important thing is a confidentiality, which is actually meaning that your data must be kept secure, private, and only accessible by the authorized parties or authorized users. Yeah, so it is actually protecting data from the unauthorized disclosure. We're actually using different type of methods to make sure the confidentiality has been configured or has been enabled. The first off is actually we're going to focus on the encryption. The encryption we actually focusing on the symmetric one, which is AES, Advanced Encryption Standard. We're actually using 128-bit or 256. Nowadays, we're actually focusing on 256 because it is actually giving us a more security layer. We could also use the RSA, which is actually one of the symmetric algorithm, Reverse, Shamir, and Edelman. We can also use the access control. We can use RBAC, rule and rule-based access control. So there are several threats associated with confidentiality. We have some data breaches. We have eavesdropping, that we can make sure our data must be confidential to make sure to mitigate against these data breaches. So I would like to focus on one security breaches that is actually happened on 2027 using the confidentiality malfunction, which is actually happening in Equifax breach. We actually use encryption and passwords to make sure our data must be confidential. That means only can be seen by authorized users. Online banking, they can use an example like HTTPS. So HTTP is actually hypertext terminal protocol, is actually not safe. So HTTP, instead of HTTP, we're going to use HTTPS to make sure our website must be secured. So it should be flow, the diagram should be user to encrypted data, and then it's going to the server. Policies and compliance, as I can tell you what some of the compliance like GDPR, which is actually referring to General Data Protection Rule, which is actually followed by the European Union, and HIPAA, which actually help us to reduce confidentiality risk. The second one is integrity. Integrity is actually referring to ensure data remains trustworthy, consistent, accurate, and reliable. Also, integrity makes sure the data I'm going to transfer from the sender side to receiver side has not been altered, deleted, or fabrication, or not even seen by any other middle person. We call it man in the middle attack. Sometimes someone is actually, if we're actually making a VPN from one side to another side. So man in the middle attack means someone means the cyber attacker can go through in the middle, and they can just see the data. They actually not going to do anything, but they can see the data. So the integrity is actually not being ensured on that system. We need to make sure it's not going to happen. So we are going to make sure it verifies the information retains its original state from the creation through the stage and the transmission. So we're going to use several methods to make sure our data has been intact, or the integrity has been ensured. The first of all, we're going to use SHA. It's actually a hashing algorithm. We are going to use 256. We could use digital signatures as well. We can use a software verification. So whenever we are going to have or receive a file, we're going to use a hash algorithm to make sure to check and verify the data has not been altered, not has been modified, and the data has been intact from sender to receiver side. Yep, we can use the software chain attackers and software downloads as a real example. The software downloads is actually using digital signatures to confirm files are not tampered with any cyber attacker. The last availability means is actually the last function of our CI triad. Availability means ensure the systems and the data remain accessible and operational and functional when needed. That means 24/7, ensuring reliable access to systems. Yeah, ensure timely access to data or service when needed. We can use different methods to make sure the data must be available. The very basic function is the backup of your data, or we call it redundancy in networking infrastructure. We call it also load balance. Yeah. So there are some threats associated with the availability, like DDoS attack. DDoS is actually distributed denial of services. Sometimes the hacker can give us unnecessary information and can make our network system overloaded with unnecessary information, so that the necessary information will be missed by the router or the networking device when the data is actually needed. Yeah. So hardware failures, sometimes the power failure would be one of the main cause that can be associated with the availability of the data. In case of, as an example, I can use the AWS outage incidents or cloud services uptime. If something happened to the cloud services, our virtual router switches are not available on that time, the data may be not available. Yep. So we need to make sure we must need a backup of our desired data. We can use different type of backup technologies. I'm going to explain a little bit in different slide. So we need to make sure our primary data must be backed up using 3 different techniques. I'm going to explain that one anytime soon. Real world example, Netflix and cloud platforms use the backup servers to prevent downtime failures. So we are going to talking about the mechanism of this CI triad. First, about the confidentiality, we're actually using the symmetric encryption, as I have already explained you about AES, Advanced Encryption Standard. We're actually using a different bit, 128 or 256. I would prefer 256 for better security level or security layer. We could use asymmetric encryption, that is RSA. Multi-factor authentication, we can use multi-factor authentication to make sure the data has been authenticated in different layer. Yeah, we could use two authenticator, more than two authentication factor. It could be using your email address or your SMS or authenticator add from a different third-party software. We could use VPN or TLS or SSL certificate to make sure our data has been confidential. Only the authorized person can see this one. Integrity. The mechanism is, as we have already discussed about, the hash function. SHA, we definitely use a SHA algorithm to make sure our data has not been altered or intact from the sender to receiver end. We could use a checksum and error detection as well, or the blockchain, or we could use a different version control system. So from the sender, if I'm going to use version 1.2, and we're going to use hash algorithm, and the sender is going to actually receive 1.2 version as well. If they're going to use a different version, that means the data has been not intact or data has been altered or seen by any other cyber hacker. The last version is availability. Availability is actually totally depending on backup, failover, or we call it redundancy. It could be several type of redundancy. It could be your network redundancy. It could be your data backup redundancy. For the network, we could use a backup router or backup switch or backup firewall devices to make sure if something happened to our primary data center or primary server or primary any devices, we could have the same backup using the backup server or failover system. Cloud computing, we can use distributed system. Disaster recovery planning, as we know, we have the data center and we could have the DR as well. For a very big company, they're actually using both DC and DR. DR means the disaster recovery. So whenever something happened to some data center, DR must be relocated or must be configured into a different geographical location. So if something happened to our DC, this is actually replicating or transferring all of the data with that disaster recovery, so we can still able to get the data from the DL location. And we could use backup strategies using a 3-to-1 backup rule. So very interesting things we are going to learn about in next slide. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about why the CI triad matters in practice in actual real working environment. So the CI triad is actually a guideline for evaluating security measures and alignment with the business goals. Yeah, incident response, if something happened in our workplace environment, triad is actually helped to mitigate or address those issues. Yeah, like the ransomware is impacting on confidentiality, integrity, and availability during any incidents. We can also use risk management in investments because it supports the risk analysis and informed decision and prioritizing security investment like backups and access controls, which is a firewall rules. We're going to discuss about the firewall rules as well in the last of the slides. We're going to talking about different type of cybersecurity standards, certification, education, and training, which is actually practiced in this CI triad. In a conclusion of CI triad is a core security of the cybersecurity and information design. We can use different policy, risk management, and architecture to address those CI triad, and is essential for modern digital systems. I'm going to refer some of the rule and policy when we're actually finishing the slides. Before doing this one, actually we are going to talk about the 3-to-1 backup rules for data protection, or we can call it as a backup or redundancy. It's really interesting things. So the 3-to-1 backup rule states the organization should have 3 copies of the data which would be stored on 2 different media. One should be an external drive and another should be a cloud storage. External drive is actually referring to your physical drive, which is actually SSD, your NVMe or HDD. And cloud storage, you can use any cloud storage available in the market. And the one means a offsite copy. You must have an offsite copy, that means a working copy, so that you can retrieve your file in case of losing your data. So the basic concept for 3-to-1 backup strategy is that 3 copies of data are made to be protected. Yeah, you must save 3 types of copies data into your system. One is the working data that's actually you have been working right now. Another one could be saved into your physical media, like I told you, SSD or HDD or NAS drive. And another one should be a cloud. Yeah, the copies are stored onto different types of storage media, must be physical and cloud, and one copy of the data is sent offsite. If something happened, you still have that opportunity to get that data back up. So the references that I have already mentioned you, we are actually using the NIST cybersecurity framework for Australian workplace information. We could also use the ISO ISAC 27001 standards. We can use the cryptography and networking security. We can use different cybersecurity case study and a foundation of information security frameworks. We could also refer to as ISM, Information Security Manual. Before we're going to wrap up for today's session, do you have any question? If you have any question, don't hesitate to email me, or you can you can contact me through my Elon message. I'll be available on imran.khan@cit.edu.au. Please write me an email for any case related to this course. I'm more than happy to assist you for further queries or further research. Thank you so much for being so patient with my class lecture and the training session. As I told you, please contact me for any further questions. And for the practical demonstration, actually, we are going to use a virtual platform, which is actually a Microsoft Azure Lab. So as you know, we have already sent you an invitation for the Microsoft Azure Lab, so you can practice after the demonstration. So we're going to show you 3 different type of training session today. One is actually how to do the data encryption using the encrypt contents to secure the data. I'm going to show you how to perform the encryption on a folder using the encrypt advanced attributes. We are going to also learn about the data sharing strategy for public and private folder to make sure the PI, personally identifiable information, has been ensured for different type of private and public folder. And last of all, we would also like to go with the access control rule or firewall configuration. I'm going to show you how to configure the firewall using the pfSense firewall router. We are going to use also the Microsoft Azure Lab. But for this 3 practical demonstration, I'm going to upload that training session in another training session 2 video. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye. Have a nice day.